We used to whisper about it between bites of takeout, how one day we'd leave the endless meetings, the buzzing fluorescent lights, the stress migraines, and open a little cafe of our own. Just something warm, personal. A place where we'd know every face and serve coffee with stories, not just sugar. It was our shared dream, equal parts escape and hope. So when we finally quit our jobs, one after the other, it felt like jumping off a cliff. No parachutes, just trust in each other. We threw ourselves into it. Every dollar we had saved, every sleepless night, every ounce of energy. No staff, just the two of us. While he brewed cappuccinos, I handled the counter. I'd scrub the floors at closing time while he prepped for the morning. We burned a lot of pastries in those first weeks, and laughed until we cried. That tiny cafe, with its squeaky door and chipped mugs, became more than a business. It became a beating heart we built together. In the beginning, most days were quiet. Some hours passed with nothing but the hum of the fridge and the smell of baked cinnamon. But slowly, the neighborhood started to notice us. Familiar faces trickled in, first out of curiosity, then habit. One regular brought in her dog and stayed for hours. Another came after work just for our almond croissants. It felt like we were building something real, something that finally had roots. I remember the first morning we opened early just to catch the commuter crowd. It was still dark out and we could barely keep our eyes open, but the smell of fresh coffee and hope filled the air. He looked at me from behind the espresso machine, hair messy, apron stained with flour, and said, "We're really doing this, aren't we?" I just smiled, too full of emotion to speak. We were exhausted, broke, overwhelmed, but we were building a dream. Together. We had our routines. He'd always make the first batch of cold brew, and I'd set out the pastries. We moved like two people who knew each other's rhythms by heart. I could tell when he needed a break just by how he stirred the milk. I'd slide him a muffin without a word. He'd fix my apron strings when they got twisted. Those little things, those quiet, invisible gestures, they meant everything back then. That's what love looked like to me. And the cafe? It started to breathe on its own. We added a chalkboard menu, a shelf of books for customers to borrow. Locals started leaving notes taped to their favorite seats. We even had a regular's punch card, and people actually used it. There was a kind of magic in that place. It was where neighbors became friends, and where I started to believe we could really make this last forever. Every night we'd lock the door, turn off the lights, and sit for a moment in the quiet. Sometimes with a glass of wine, sometimes just tea. We'd talk about what worked, what didn't, who we served that day. He'd joke about becoming a latte artist, and I'd pretend to critique his foam hearts. I loved those moments. When the world outside went still, and it was just us, two tired dreamers who had turned a blank space into something alive. People started calling it our place. Not just ours, but theirs too. We had couples who celebrated anniversaries there, students who crammed for exams, even a man who proposed to his girlfriend in the corner booth. Watching those lives unfold inside walls we had painted ourselves, it filled me with something I can't quite explain. Pride, maybe. Or peace. Or that rare, fleeting sense that everything is exactly where it's meant to be. But the thing about peace is, it's quiet. And sometimes, you don't notice when something starts shifting until the silence changes. Until the rhythm that once felt like home starts missing a beat. And just like that, the dream you built with someone can begin to feel like it's slipping through your hands. It started with a smile. One of those bright, sugary ones that feel just a little too polished to be real. Her name was Layla. I remember because she made sure everyone remembered. She came in that first time wearing a sundress in the middle of autumn, ordered a strawberry iced frappuccino, of all things, and a croissant. Every single day after that, it was the same. Like clockwork, same seat, same order, same smile. At first, I didn't think much of it. We had our regulars, people who came in for the routine, for the comfort. But Layla didn't just come in. She lingered. She always waited until he was behind the counter. She'd laugh a little louder, touch her hair a little more, lean in just slightly when she talked. I saw it, noticed it, but I brushed it off. People can be friendly. I've always believed in giving the benefit of the doubt. Still, there was something about the way her eyes stayed on him even after the transaction ended. The way he didn't rush to walk away. How their conversations had layers, more than just the usual cafe chatter. He'd ask if she wanted the usual before she even opened her mouth, and she'd light up like they shared a secret. It was subtle, polite, but something about it started to itch under my skin. I told myself I was being ridiculous. Jealous, maybe. Insecure. It's not like he ever crossed a line, at least not one anyone else would see. But when you've built a life with someone, you know their rhythms. And suddenly, his rhythm was different. He was more distracted, quicker to smile at his phone, and oddly quiet when I asked about his day. The smallest things began to sting. A missed kiss on the cheek, a text he wouldn't show me, his laugh softer, but not for me. Then one evening, as we closed up shop, I asked, gently. Light tone, easy smile, like it was no big deal. I said, "You and Layla talk a lot these days, huh?" He didn't even pause to think, just waved it off like I was being dramatic. "You're overthinking, Rachel. She's just a regular. That's all." That's all. As if that phrase could erase the discomfort knotting in my chest. As if I hadn't seen the way he leaned in a little too close. But I nodded. I smiled. I let it go, at least on the outside. Because when someone you love tells you there's nothing there, you want to believe them. You need to. And so you tuck that doubt away like a receipt you're not ready to throw out, just in case you'll need it later. Layla kept coming. Same seat, same smile, same sweet tone when she said his name. And me? I kept watching, quietly, carefully. I noticed how she never asked about me, never made eye contact when we were all three standing there. It was like I didn't exist in her version of the cafe. Just a shadow behind the counter. I started dreading the sound of the doorbell every time it rang, wondering if it was her, if he'd light up when he saw her walk in. And there was something cruel about how casual it all seemed. Like I was the only one who felt the weight of the shift. He acted normal, too normal, almost rehearsed. She stayed bubbly, complimenting his latte art and giggling at jokes that weren't that funny. But I wasn't imagining it. I felt the change. In the air, in my bones. Like the cafe was no longer just ours. Like someone had slipped in and rearranged the furniture when I wasn't looking. Still, I told myself to hold steady. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was all innocent. But that ache in my chest said otherwise. And soon, something would happen that would make it impossible to keep pretending. It was a Tuesday. Slow morning, gray skies, the kind that usually meant a quiet cafe and extra time to prep pastries. He came in a little rushed, barely kissed my cheek, and said he needed to leave early. "A supplier issue," he told me. "The espresso beans are delayed again. I'm going to meet the guy downtown." He said it so smoothly, so offhandedly, that I almost didn't question it, but something in his eyes, it didn't match his voice. I nodded, of course. What else was I supposed to do? We were partners. I trusted him, or at least I was still pretending I did. So I stayed behind, kept the cafe running solo. The morning passed, and I watched the door. 10, 11, noon, still no Layla. That's when the tightness in my chest returned. She never missed a day. Rain, shine, holidays. She always came. Until today. The same day he suddenly had an urgent errand to run, my mind started racing. I wiped the same counter 3 times, burned a tray of muffins I'd made 100 times before. Something didn't feel right. My instincts, the ones I'd pushed down for weeks, were now screaming. So I pulled out my phone. That safety app we'd installed when we first opened the cafe. It showed both our locations in case of emergency. I tapped his icon. He wasn't downtown. He wasn't near any supplier. He was somewhere else entirely. The little blue dot hovered in a part of town we never went to. Not for work, not for anything. A quiet side street near the park, far from warehouses or vendor offices. My stomach turned. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, hoping it would move. Hoping it would make sense. But it just sat there. Still. Like the truth had finally stopped hiding. And with it came this sharp, cold clarity. Something was happening and I couldn't unsee it. I stood behind the counter, trying to breathe through the rush of emotion pressing against my ribs. My hands were shaking, my heart pounding like it knew something I didn't want to say out loud. I looked around the cafe, our cafe, and suddenly, everything felt unfamiliar. The photos on the wall, the chalkboard menu, even the little jar of cinnamon sticks. How many of these moments had I shared with someone who was only half present? I didn't even lock the back door. I threw my apron in the bin, grabbed my bag, and called an Uber. I remember the sound of the rain starting just as I stepped outside, like the sky was echoing me, quiet, heavy, and about to break. I dropped the cafe pin from my GPS and tapped the one he was still sitting at. I had no idea what I'd find, but I knew I had to go. I had to know. The car ride felt endless. My fingers tightened around my phone the whole way, like it could protect me from what I might see. My mind kept spinning, grabbing at straws. Maybe he was meeting someone about the shipment. Maybe Layla's absence was a coincidence. Maybe I was wrong. But deep down, I wasn't. I could feel the truth waiting for me like a glass about to shatter. I wasn't just chasing a suspicion. I was chasing confirmation. As we pulled up to the location, I recognized the street from old weekend walks. Quiet, picturesque, full of little cafes and corner bistros we always said we'd try but never did. My driver parked just down the block, and I told him I'd only be a minute. I stepped out slowly, drenched in nerves, scanning the storefronts until I saw it, the tiny bistro with the red awning. And behind the window, two silhouettes, his and hers. I didn't move at first. I stood there, soaking in the image, the way he leaned forward, laughing. How she touched his arm like it was natural, like it belonged to her. They were comfortable, intimate, in a way that only confirmed what I already knew. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't overthinking. And in that moment, I felt something in me shift. Not just pain, but a fire beginning to rise. I didn't storm in. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. I just stood outside the bistro window, watching them laugh over wine like they hadn't burned the house we built with their hands. I waited until the server placed their plates, roasted chicken, something with truffle oil, and a side of betrayal. Then I walked. Slowly, steadily. Each step deliberate, like I was walking toward the version of myself that had finally stopped begging for explanations. I opened the door. The bell chimed, soft and polite. Nothing like the scream in my chest. Heads turned, but I only saw two. Their faces. Her mouth froze mid-laugh. His fork hovered, suspended. For a second, nobody spoke. And then I did. Enjoying the delivery meeting? My voice was calm, too calm, like a whisper laced with a blade. Layla's face went pale. He opened his mouth, but the words got stuck somewhere between shame and stupidity. She tried to say something, some practiced lie or pathetic excuse, but I didn't give her the space. I just looked at her, not angry, not broken. Just done. One look that said everything. That burned louder than any scream. That made her shrink in her seat like a child caught stealing. And then I turned to him, my business partner, my husband, my stranger, and smiled. It wasn't a smile of forgiveness. It wasn't kindness. It was precision, surgical, cold, and exact. The kind of smile that says, "You just lost the last person who ever believed in you." He stammered something, my name maybe, or some broken sentence he hoped would glue everything back together. But I didn't stop walking. I brushed past their table like I was walking out of a meeting that never should have been scheduled. I didn't yell. I didn't cause a scene. I just walked through that bistro like it owed me nothing, and I owed it even less. I could feel their eyes on my back, like 100 tiny needles. Let them watch. Let them wonder what I'd do next. I didn't need an audience. I needed air. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the ground still glistened, like the world itself had been wrung out. I stood under the red awning, closed my eyes, and let the silence settle. Funny thing about betrayal, It doesn't always explode. Sometimes it arrives slowly, like fog rolling in, and then suddenly, you're lost in it. But that moment under the awning, that was when the fog cleared, when I knew I wasn't the one who had something to be ashamed of. He made his choices. So did she. Now it was my turn. I walked away without looking back, not at them, not at the little table where my marriage died over wine and stolen glances. I didn't cry. Not yet. My feet just knew where to go, straight into the next chapter. My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably him trying to do damage control, but I let it ring. Let him sit in the mess he made. I had more important things to do, like take back what was mine. By the time I got home, something inside me had crystallized. The ache had gone quiet, replaced by a strange kind of clarity. I opened the front door and was greeted by silence, the kind that tells you the air has changed. I didn't wander around searching for comfort. I grabbed boxes, pulled out his drawers, packed everything he owned like I was erasing a mistake. With every folded shirt, I felt lighter. With every taped-up box, I felt like I was reclaiming oxygen. He had taken something from me, from us, but he hadn't destroyed me, not even close. And as I stood in the doorway of our bedroom, my bedroom now, I realized I wasn't going to let this be the end of the story. No, this was just the intermission. What came next was the rebrand. The next morning, I changed the locks. Not just the front door, every lock that had ever given him a way back in. Cafe keys, storage closets, the spare hidden in the planter. Gone. I wasn't grieving. I was restructuring. I walked into our cafe like a woman on a mission. My cafe. And the first thing I did was take his name off the business license. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I signed the papers with a steady hand and a clearer heart than I'd had in weeks. I applied for a small business loan that same day. Met with a local art student I'd seen sketching in the cafe before all of this happened. She was brilliant, quiet, with bold ideas, and a fire in her eyes I hadn't seen in mine for a while. Together, we redesigned everything. The logo, the brand, even the cups. It was no longer the cafe he helped build. It was the one I had rescued. From the ashes, I created something sharper, stronger, fierce. We called it Brewed Awakening, a name that didn't just fit the coffee, it fit me. The new logo? A bold woman in silhouette, rising with a steaming mug in hand. Powerful, unapologetic, underneath in clean lettering, owned by one woman only. I didn't care if people noticed the change. I wanted them to, because I wasn't just selling coffee anymore. I was serving a statement. It didn't take long for word to spread. Some customers blinked at the changes. New signage, fresh paint, a sharper edge to the place they thought they knew. But most, they stayed. They supported. They clapped when I introduced the team I'd hired. Young, talented, hungry. The cafe had a new rhythm now, and every beat belonged to me. No shared glances. No half-truths. Just purpose poured into every cup. And then one day, she walked in. Layla. Dressed down this time, hair tucked behind her ears like maybe she thought that would make her look smaller. She didn't order. Just stood in the doorway like she didn't know whether to turn back or step forward. I wiped the counter and met her eyes without a flicker of doubt. "We don't serve leftovers here," I said, soft but sharp. She left, just like that. No drama, no apology. Just silence and retreat. That moment didn't bring triumph. It brought closure. A full stop where there had once been a jagged, dangling thread. She was gone. He was gone. And me? I was still here. Standing in the same cafe, only now with brighter walls, louder laughter, and coffee that tasted just a little more like freedom. They say revenge is best served cold, but I prefer mine with oat milk and a double shot of espresso. Months passed and business bloomed. I was featured in a local magazine, The Woman Who Turned Betrayal into Business. Customers brought friends, tourists stumbled in from Instagram posts, and a few whispered that the place had a story. They weren't wrong. Every corner held a piece of it. Every latte was a quiet triumph. And him? He stopped calling. Eventually. Word got around that he was jobless, couch surfing, trying to pitch business ideas that no one would fund. I heard he came by once, peeked through the window, but didn't come in. Maybe he couldn't face what he'd lost. Or maybe he knew that there was nothing left here with his name on it. Not even bitterness. Just distance. Just consequence. But me? I still get up early. I still open the shop before the sun. I greet customers by name, wipe counters with music in the background, and sip the first cup of the day with both hands wrapped around it like a quiet promise. I didn't just survive betrayal. I branded it, and I turned it into something that would never belong to anyone but me.